Afternoon everyone and welcome to Lunchbox Soapbox at the Wheeler Centre. I'm Michael Williams, Head of Programming here, and nice to see some returning faces and some new faces for today's Lunchbox Soapbox. There aren't many people of my acquaintance who I'd use the word genius to describe, but our guest today is a bona fide genius.
Don't use that word!
And now he's going to have to live up to it, which is just cruel on my part. But anyone who's seen Keating the musical or any of Casey Bennetto's other work will know that he is a man of seemingly boundless creative talent, which is threatening, or can be. So he's talking today about the tyranny of the blank page. Please make welcome Casey Bennetto.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I must begin by apologising for the nudeness of the scone. We're in the middle of rehearsals for Threepenny Opera at the moment, so this is what Tiger Brown's going to look like, except with fancier duds and outfit. But anyway. Brothers, sisters, comrades in arms, thank you for coming to this address, this rally, which I have provisionally titled The Unremitting Evil of the Blank Page. I'm sure many of you, in writing or in experimenting with writing, have sat with a pen in your hand or a white screen in front of you, a slow blinking cursor, and suffered unspeakable torment, but felt unable to come forward before now. I thank you for your courage today. I look out at these proud, defiant faces, these noble warriors in attendance, and I know that our time has come. For too long now we have suffered. For too long we have toiled in pain, locked in a hateful, silent struggle with the empty page and its ironic invitations. Make your mark, it whispers, as if offering us the greatest courtesy. No, my foolscap friends, here is a collection of spirits who are wise to your evil, sadistic game. Not so easily will you define us. Let's have a look at one right now. I know this will get your blood boiling. Not so easily will you define us. Not so simply will we be contained. Popular sentiment has you as spotless. But we who have fallen victim to your blank stare know better. And we are here today to wield a poison pen. Now, we don't have the rows all full of folks and all that sort of stuff, but that's all right, because this is the beginning of a movement, people. Feel glad that you are here on the ground floor. We fight to free the souls of the many well-meaning but misguided citizens who think that the blank page offers opportunity. Look, they cry, you can go anywhere. There are no limits, no restrictions. You're free to realize your deepest imaginings. They see the infinite white of distant possibility. What they fail to see is the wall slowly descending over their eyes. For if the function of art is to hold a mirror up to nature, then the blank page is the cruelest reflection of all. What it reflects is not, as popularly thought, a dearth of thought or invention or inspiration on the part of the writer. I mean, certainly there are bewildered would-be writers the world over who would auction their children for inspiration. But that's not what the blank page tells us. After all, it's rare that an author props themselves in front of a blank page with no thought at all in mind and the pen in their hand. Now, the cruelty I speak of is a deeper one. It is the unspoken taunt of the unwritten idea. How will I be translated? How will I find form? This is as true of a poem as it is of a song or a novel or a show. You could say, start at the very beginning, a very good place to start. But even the first line surely has to be informed by the question, what shape is this piece? Which is another way of saying, what do I want to express with this piece? Which is another way of saying, what will this piece be when it's finished? Which is another way of saying, do we really have to finish the piece before we can start it? Or do we just put the pen or the cursor at the start of the first line, take a deep breath, and to blast away? Now, generally, writers of any persuasion don't talk very much about this stuff because everyone wants the process to retain its mysticism and its magic. And writers are as guilty of that as anyone. Writers want to sit there going, well, it was a dark and stormy night, and the quill was rolled out in front of me, and then the lightning struck, and the inspiration, And no one wants to see someone going, yeah, well, this is draft 37, But it also means that keeping that sense of mystery also means that the procedure contains its fair share of horror as well. Because the moment we first do something on the blank page is the moment we're very likely to do something wrong. Now, it's better to embrace that world of infinite possibility, the perfect possibility, to waft with our head in the white cloud of the empty page than to begin with a movement that must, by necessity, be a misstep, because it isn't every possible thing you can think of about the idea at once. Doors leading to other worlds slam shut with every additional stroke of the pen, every additional journey we make further along. The work we could have written, which was the book of everything, is reduced step by step to a mere page of something. You know, when it's incorporeal, it can live forever. But when we're pinned and wriggling on the wall, then how should we begin to spit out all the butt ends of our days and ways? And how should we presume? This, comrades, is the battle. And these are the stakes in our war against this sanctimonious scourge of literature. We are face to face with immortality, with pristine, undisturbed infinity, stretching out on the page before us and spiralling up in our mind's eye on the thousands of possible directions we have in mind for our precious idea. And the only thing we can contribute is death. Death to the purity of the page, death to most of these possibilities. In short, when we touch pen to paper or finger to keyboard, we kill God. Now, surely only a fool wouldn't be intimidated by those kind of stakes. And once more, we perform this deicide so that we can lead our own cherished idea from conception to execution as smoothly and painlessly as possible. That's right, even the winning possible potential idea gets knocked off in the end. Becomes simply the frozen carcass of the living, breathing, exchangeable idea it once was. What mass-murdering monsters have we become? Without the empty promises of the blank page, without its hypocritical sanctity, without its untrustworthy visions of infinity, we would not now be surrounded by and covered in the black blood of our own inklings. So it's no surprise that writers have learned to treat their newly hatched ideas with some degree of caution. Writers are careful, some might say superstitious, about talking to friends about them, exposing them to daylight before they're ready. You see, every new external voice is going to add something to your conception, sometimes good, sometimes bad. Aunt Matilda hears the idea and says, "Ooh, it sounds a bit grim." Now, she may be the only one to say that ever in the lifespan of your execution of the work or your acquaintance with the idea. But as you write a dark scene or verse or sequence, Aunt Matilda's voice is going to come back at you like the reverb from hell. It sounds a bit grim. Maybe I should make it a bit less grim. No, maybe I should definitely get more grim. Wait, now it is too grim. Or is it? In my past writing experience, I've never once bothered to consider the grimness factor. Maybe the last show is too grim as well. Maybe I should just stop thinking about the grimness. It'll just be as grim as it is, and there you go. You can see what's going to happen. Riddled with self-consciousness, at best I produce a piece which I have carefully, scientifically calibrated to be neither too grim nor too sunny. Ta-da! Of course, now the piece as a whole has little in common with the languages you Earth people speak. But thank goodness I've balanced it perfectly so that next Christmas Aunt Matilda can say, "Too grim? I don't remember ever saying that." For me, in contemplating new ideas, structure always comes first. And I mean, it's not totally true. In terms of Keating, when we first took, and you can spot now, I've moved off notes because otherwise I'm just going to read at everyone for the whole 20 minutes. When I first came up with the idea for Keating, the first thing you do is you run it past the Aunt Matildas of your acquaintance, your closest friends, and you say, "Here's this idea, what do you think of this?" And the two friends around about kind of went, "Meh." So I went, "Okay." Well, you know, if enthusiasm is contagious, lack of enthusiasm is just as contagious. And you sort of go, "Well, okay, must have been barking up the wrong tree, put it away." And it wasn't until I mentioned it 10 months later that another acquaintance who I was just working with on another project went, "Oh, that's really great. And what it needs to be is a 3-hour opera. And it needs to have cardboard grandfather clocks all the way through. And he has to wander through like the White Rabbit at the start of it, going, 'I'm late!' And it sort of, now, you know, it didn't become that. That would have required far more accomplishment than I would have to offer it. But the thing that excited me about that idea in the first place was the structure. And with most of the ideas that I really get enthused about, that's the case. You could see in Keating's tale that there was going to be a rise and a fall. You could see there was going to be 3 bad guys coming up against him and that the last one would bring him down. There were all these things that already fit dramatic convenience. And it seemed like it was going to be great fun to basically hang shit on the modern musical and on the political process at the same time. But that, as far as I could see, that was all the notion that I had of it. In the beginning, it was sort of like, okay, it's going to be that kind of structure: the rise, and then the time at the top, and then the fall, or not. But beyond that point, the next step was the first great step in many venerable Melbourne Comedy Festival shows, which is the poster. Because by and large you need to design the poster before you do anything else, and write the little 80-word blurb and put it in. But because the plot already existed, and because I was excited about that story structure of his career, once you're excited about those things, and once the footings of those kinds of structures feel sound, there's a whole bunch of other stuff you can dismiss. I knew Anita Keating wasn't going to be in it, Hazel Hawke, Blanche, all of the partners and all that sort of stuff, and I knew that restricted me to a largely male cast, because apart from Cheryl Kernow, there weren't many female figures in politics in that time. But I knew also that those would be dead ends. First of all, in terms of Paul and Anita, it would not be a good tale to be telling if you wanted to do the triumphant return and the victory at the end. But also, all of those things are off topic. They're off the stream of what the strength of the structure was, which is rise and fall and rise again. And so it was clear that had to be political in nature. Similarly, the Spiegel Tent show, which I'm sure hardly anyone here saw, because we did it for like 2 nights in the Spiegel Tent in 2008. But it was called A Largely Fanciful History of the Spiegel Tent, and that was in essence the whole idea. It was just sort of like, let's start in the Spiegel Tent in the 1920s and follow it through to its present-day revival. And it was very much a case where, once again, you could look at it and say, there's a definite rise and fall and rise again here, and that maps well onto the modern musical. That's not to say that, you can't write a musical which is all doom and gloom and getting lower and lower and lower until everything explodes in a cloud of self-loathing and all that sort of stuff, but that's not the kind of thing I'm so interested in. And with the Spiegel Tent show, you could also track that, okay, well, if it starts in the 20s and 30s and we build up to the Weimar Republic, all that cabaret, European stuff, we can have a character who's a sort of an ingenue in the 20s, and then a diva in the 30s, and then, a drunkard, a wastrel in the 50s and 60s, and then a Lotte Lenya style sort of legend in the 1990s, and we could follow that arc through and have it make sense. But having talked about the Spiegel Tent show, I think it's time I played a song from it, if no one minds. Anyone mind if I... Because I've got things... Oh, no. Thank you very much. Oh, no. I have a backing track here. Backing track or guitar? Live music, backing track. Live music, backing track. Live music, of course. The trick will be if I can remember how to play this song. Don't laugh. I'm not sure that I've ever actually played it on guitar before, so... This is the tale of the ingenue turned diva turned wastrel at the point of her wastrelness. And in the Spiegel Tent show, we gave it to the barman, the Spiegel Tent barman, who would sit there and go, "Ah, yes, I remember the old days and how far we have fallen," and all that stuff. And since we're toyed with the idea of actually giving it to the character, Leila Montesano Jones herself, still toying with it, either way. In progress. There used to be a python charming diva by name of Leila Montesano Jones. And she laughed and cried on cue with eyes of cobalt blue, and the circus through her bones. Layla left a lover and believer in every country fair and seaside town, till the serpent took its toll and it crawled into her soul, and the poison pulled her down to the dregs, the end of every glass. She was branded and abandoned at a pretty pass. Down to the dregs, the barley and the maize, and she drank the living nightmares of her dying days. You know, you need to be hanging over a bar with an accordion going, ooh. It's not my job to shed a tear for Layla. I poured the drink and never questioned why, though her face was lined with pain from the grinding of the grain. She would always drain it dry. And at night I hear her shouting out an order for all the wayward spirits in her keep, and they join her in lament for her feeble spiegel tent on its slow descent to sleep. Down to the dregs, the days of the decade, the indentured and the wretched who refuse to fade. Down to the dregs, our vessel runs aground at the bottom of the barrel where the rats lie drowned. That's where we can be found, at the bottom of the barrel where the rats lie drowned. So there's a number of songs in that show that I'm hoping that it will resurrect it at some stage and reconfigure it. Because it's a bit frustrating having a show written about the Spiegelten, because you sort of go, okay, now it's always got to be in the Spiegel. We can do it in late October, as long as David Bates thinks it's a good time to bring the Spiegelten back to Melbourne. Otherwise, we won't do it that year. But those notions of, with both Keating and with the Spiegelten, I went to sort of effort that I don't normally do if I'm unfamiliar with the structure. If I'm very scared and going, I don't know what's next, what's going to happen, I tend to be quite tentative. But with particularly with Keating and the Spiegelten thing, I did the whole thing of getting the big whiteboard with post-it notes and mapping out the arc of Act 1 and then the arc of Act 2 and Act 3 and making sure that it all... And, you know, I'm always talking in terms of 3-act structure when I talk about structure, because it's really the only structure I know. I've been indoctrinated by Hollywood, and I know how it's meant to start. It's, everything's going along, you meet our heroes and, hey, we like them, and everything's going along swimmingly, and then one unfortunate day, such and such inciting incident, and it leads to trouble and trouble and trouble, and they fall to their lowest point. But happily, right at the last moment, it's yay! And the tampering with that structure and the ways in which you can violate it and have fun with it, I've always found really interesting. There was one in Keating which changed back and forward from it just changed one way, from the original Drowsy Drivers production of 2005-2006 to the Belvoir production, which toured everywhere. There were lots of things that changed. Obviously, there were more lights and things like that, actual sets. But the ending of the show also changed quite significantly, because in the Belvoir production, which is the one that was in the Comedy Theatre and all that sort of stuff, a scrutineer comes out and polls the audience as to whether they want Paul Keating to win at the end, with the audience basically having been stacked in order to go, yay, They came to a show called Keating. What are they going to do? It'd be rather surprising if any other outcome came about. And that was the way in which that was designed. But the original production had a finish that I liked more, and we almost reinstated it. Michael, we've talked about this before, but we almost reinstated the original finish in the last few weeks when Neil Armfield, who was the director of the Belvoir version, went, maybe we will go back to that original. I'm like, yeah, great. 2 years later, Neil, and now you want to go back to the original. But it was that postal worker from the Mawson base in Antarctica burst in with a whole bunch of postal votes for Paul Keating, which put Paul Keating over the line. Now, I really liked the stupidity of that, and I really liked the fact that it put the impetus of Paul Keating winning with the show and not with the audience, because one of the gags of the show was that it was so infatuated with Paul Keating and everything he did was great and he was the shiny hero, So to me it felt like a real music theatre thing that they would do. Oh, and now the ending's coming up and it's really going to, we're rooted by the ending because it's really going to be a sad finish. Wait, no it's not! Someone's going to burst in. It's funny because I'm doing Threepenny Opera at the moment and, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen... Oh yes, that's right, block your ears. No, it's pretty obvious from the way that Threepenny Opera is set out anyway. In fact, they even tell you before it happens. But there's exactly that at the end of Threepenny Opera. There's a fake Deus Ex Machina, as they call it, a god from the machine, which alters the plot. And just when we didn't expect it, Threepenny Opera actually says, well, that's the end of the plot and it looks like things are going to turn out horribly. But we can't do that to you because you're an audience. It's all that Brecht stuff of, you're an audience, you want a happy ending, all right. And they give you the happy ending. And that was kind of the point of the original one in Keating. And it wasn't actually until working on this again with Threepenny that I sort of we should have done that. Anyway, sorry, rabbiting on. I've talked to a couple of other people. I am rabbiting on. I'm just looking at my time going, sorry. I talked to Eddie Perfect, who is in Threepenny as well, about this kind of stuff, especially about the notion of whether or not you talk about your ideas before they're ready to hatch, when they are just inklings. And Ed's opinion was you want to keep your enthusiasm for the idea, you don't want it overexposed. Even if you do go to the lengths of explaining an idea for a song, you don't know that people truly get what it is you're talking about, what it is that you find attractive about the idea. It can be hard to express. He champions demoing, which I'm a big fan of as well, in order to get the idea of particular songs across. But with a show, it's a lot harder. And I know he had troubles with Shane Warne, getting it into the shape that he wanted it in and all that sort of stuff. You've got to pick the people you show stuff to. You've got to sort of go, okay, this person's opinion I trust. And, I will pick a small cabal of people whose opinion I'm going to regard. And then everyone else's opinion I'm not going to regard at all. And I think actually that's pretty wise. I've never been that sort of hard-ass about it, but I think it's actually probably a pretty wise way to go. Because in the midst of it, as I say, anyone starts talking and you start going, well, maybe you're right. And it can just derail the process completely. You've got to be able to have the confidence to defend the ideas that you think are integral to the piece. Now, Ed had a specific example of this, which was in The Big Con, the show he did with Max Gillies a few years ago. There was a show song in the second half that was about committing suicide, that was called Taking Myself Away, which I thought was one of the most sort of effective dramatic pieces in the whole thing. But in fact, it had been a real struggle to keep it in the piece at all, because everyone was going, come on, laughs, 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 happy, happy. So that notion of defending those ideas, and then at the same time, that Faulkner notion of you've got to be able to kill all your darlings. You've got to take a song that you're really happy with, that you know is such an audience winner that everyone's just falling about, and go, that doesn't fit in the show. So it's gone. Great, I feel terrific about that. You know, there's 5 or 10 minutes of guaranteed laughs or, you know, moving thing, and I'll just throw it away. Which he had, to a large degree, in Warne. Again, there was a song in the second half for Bridget Warne. That's right, isn't it? Shane's mother, Bridget? I can't remember. Bridget Warne, which was Take the Pill, which was a whole song about, take the pill, Shane, and all that sort of stuff. And it turned into a whole rock number, and it was a big set piece. But it just slowed down the show too much. You were halfway through the second half, and you went, we don't have time to sit here and listen to 10 minutes of this thing. Momentum is all. And so it got thrown away. And I always find that very daunting. So clearly, in conclusion, writing is impossible. No one should attempt it. No, that's not true. Writing is impossible, but while the blank pages around not writing is also impossible, I urge you all to join with me in destroying as many blank pages as we can find. Burn them. Rip them out of the fronts and backs of books where they're only there to tease you. They're only there to surround and smother the text that's in the middle, saying, you haven't touched this yet. Well, I say, touch it. Destroy. And then maybe we can all live in peace and harmony forever. Thank you very much.